Good morning. The occupation of the 4th Precinct is unsafe for everyone. It distracts from the large work of racial equity that we must do, and we stand here as a community to say that the occupation must end. At the 4th Precinct, fires are burning in the street. They're burning near flammables, fouling the air for everyone around, including the neighbors in the neighborhood. There are barricades on Plymouth Avenue made of pallets, made of lumber that can't be moved easily when needed, blocking our emergency vehicles, redirecting our emergency vehicles, and blocking our snowplows. There's been gun violence, the deplorable shooting that happened on Monday, but shots fired multiple nights at and near the precinct. There have been false medical calls, creating chaos and dismaying everyone. And outside agitators have come in with intentions of violence. They have thrown Molotov cocktails at our officers and at our precinct. There are near daily threats to burn the precinct, to kill our officers, and to hurt people, causing harm and fear that must end. Everyone, protesters, neighbors, community residents, officers, everyone is at risk at the 4th Precinct. I and others have tried many avenues. The lines of communication have been open, the conversations have been significant, and I am here to say again, I am still open, the door is still open, my ear is still willing to hear, I am still willing to talk with any of the protesters who care to come to the table. Those conversations have not yielded the result that we need, which is the end of the occupation of the 4th Precinct. There are values at stake here. I share them, and we all share them. Values of racial equity, values of racial justice. Before this event happened, before the protests began, we were working with the community already on many of the initiatives that other cities have had to ask for, that other cities have had to start. We are part of the national initiative for building community trust and justice. We are well into the process of having body cameras on all of our officers. In the budget that I have proposed for 2016, there are many ways to address issues of police-community relationships and racial equity in the city of Minneapolis. Municipal criminal justice reform, workforce programs, work with youth, and work with folks who need to get on a new and different path. Even so, there have been additional demands made and additional demands met from the community. Immediately after the shooting, we asked for and got an independent investigation, and within a day responded to the community request for an independent federal investigation, which is underway. We have released the names and the service records of the officers involved. We have gotten culturally appropriate grief counseling for witnesses, for community members, and for the family. Governor Dayton himself has called for an investigation of any civil rights issues that have occurred in the first week of protests, and he has said he will call a special session of the legislature to talk about these issues. Many people have done a great deal to be responsive to the requests and the demands that are on the table. Even so, we know there's more to be done. We know that the work of creating racial equity, of creating the strongest possible police-community relationships is not done, and that there's a great deal of work to do. These community members and I, and so many others from around the neighborhood and the city, are standing together. We are committing ourselves to doing the hard work of systemic change for racial justice and equity. I renew my pledge to work every day to create one Minneapolis, to continue the work that I have done, that the city has done, at the city and in partnership with the community, to make sure that we have the best city possible for every single person in the city. All of that needs our attention and needs our care. And the occupation at the precinct must end so that we can pivot to the work that needs doing citywide, community-wide, and nationwide so that we can achieve the kind of racial equity that we need as a city and as a people.
Hello, everybody. My name is Keith Ellison, and when Jamar Clark was shot and killed by Minneapolis police officers, it took place within the context of a number of other shootings that took place around the country, and quite frankly, a history right here in our own Twin Cities of very difficult, tumultuous relationships between police and community. I myself have worked on this issue. My dear friend Jeff Hassan and I have actually sought redress for families and survivors through the court system. All of us know this is a serious problem. So when it first happened and there was some protesting, I thought it was disruptive. I thought it was healthy, and it was within the context of our First Amendment tradition of citizen action trying to redress grievances. But then we started having problems. Shootings outside, 5 people having been shot. We had the funeral in which the family of Jamar Clark said, look, it's time for us to move on and deal with these other systemic problems. I have people calling my office, which is on the very block that this encampment is taking place, telling me that they're worried that EMS traffic cannot get through. What if someone needed an emergency medical vehicle? There is a high-rise with a lot of seniors who live right there across the street. There's elevated smoke from the fires that keep going on, which is impacting a neighborhood which already has poor air quality, and the problems are there. Now, I believe these are unintended. I believe that the people protesting, their purpose and their intent is to raise the issue of police brutality, police accountability. That's what their goal is. But the unintended effect is that Northsiders can't use their main thoroughfare, Plymouth Avenue. The unintended effect is that emergency vehicle traffic can't go through. The bus cannot go through. There's a lot of transit-dependent people right in that neighborhood. The unintended effect is that domestic terrorists are coming to the protest to start trouble. The unintended effects are pretty numerous. And so while I say your goal, I believe, is legitimate, justice for Jamar, which in my opinion means a fair, independent investigation, the byproduct of that goal are having very negative impacts on people in the neighborhood. And by the way, I live in the neighborhood. That is my neighborhood. I am not driving to a suburb to come down there. I live within walking distance of there. My congressional office was there, and Jeff and I had a law office not less than a block from there. So this is all 4 of my children were raised there. And so my plea is this. I do not want to see Minneapolis police move the encampment out. But what alternative do we have if the protesters will not voluntarily move? And I have talked with a number of people, including, all of them, about what is the pathway for you to evolve this protest beyond the encampment? What is the process? We know that this case is going to be presented to the grand jury. I personally believe that grand juries have historically been used to dispense of these officer-involved shootings. Eric Garner, Jamar Clark, Tycel Nelson, and I'm concerned about that. But that decision is not going to be made at the 4th Precinct. That's going to be made downtown. So the real nut of justice for Jamar is not taking over North Minneapolis and occupying the street that way. My plea is to minimize the impact, the negative impact on the neighbors. If you're protesting to stand up for North Minneapolis, then please follow the Hippocratic Oath and do no harm. There is harm. Avoid it. And please understand that this effort, which started out so righteous, is beginning to have a negative impact on the neighbors. And I ask that with humility, and I ask that fully committed to the goals articulated. And as I wrap up, I will say there has been much success here. The mayor asked for an independent investigation. I asked for an independent investigation. We got one. There is an independent state investigation. The officers' names have been released. There have been a number of things that have happened moving forward. The governor has gotten involved and pledged to help move forward an agenda to help promote equity and address some of the very serious disparities in our state. The protesters, if their effort was to bring attention to an appalling condition, they have done that, and I applaud them for it. Now it's time to evolve this beyond the encampment for the sake of the people we say we're trying to help. First of those, Jamar Clark's family, which has asked for this to end. Second of all, the neighborhood and the community. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Stephen Belton, interim president and CEO of the Minneapolis Urban League. I'm here as a resident of this neighborhood. And as a resident, I mean that the Minneapolis Urban League offices are less than a block away from where the encampment, where the occupation is taking place. We have a vested interest in this community. And we are here today to support the right to peaceably assemble, to support the right to demonstrate. And we support the specific and broad objectives of the demonstrations that have taken place, which are justice for Jamar Clark and an end to the unwarranted police misconduct. We support those objectives. I want to be clear that we support demonstrations, the First Amendment right. And I want to be clear also that this is really not about the protest. It's about the occupation. The occupation has to end. The people who intended and began, as Keith so articulately pointed out, with good intentions are harming the community and the people that they intended to serve. Perhaps they don't know that. Now you know. You're hurting the community. And so we're asking them to step back, to regroup, to pause, and take yes for an answer. You've had a bunch of yeses. You've had yeses that have been listed here already, so I won't go over them again. But all of your objectives, with the exception of one, have been met. So take yes for an answer. And that one objective, frankly, I don't believe you want it anyway. If the police were to release the tapes, first of all, they'd be violating law. The Minnesota Data Practices law prohibits them from releasing the tapes before the investigation is over. But more importantly, I believe if they were to release the tapes now, all you're doing is giving a script to people both in the community who witnessed it, but also giving a script to the police who committed this, well, who shot Jamar. Why do that? Allow the process to go forward. Take yes for an answer. It's important to remember that there are many individuals and many organizations that have supported this work, who have been part of the protests. The Minneapolis Urban League is one of them. We have marched, we've protested, we have made our concerns known, we continue to make our concerns known. We have been in constant dialogue with the mayor, the governor, and with many others who are stakeholders in this community. But we are also positioned to have heard from the community, and the community has said enough is enough. Imagine, if you will, France Avenue being barricaded, turned into a no-end, dead-end street, or University Avenue, or Lake Street, or any main thoroughfare through your community. Imagine it being taken control of and barricaded. And I don't mean just, a few lines drawn in the road. I mean heaps of firewood and wooden pallets and people standing, blocking individuals from going to their jobs and going to their homes and having access to the goods and services that they need to live. Imagine that in Linden Hills. And yet for 2 weeks now, in North Minneapolis, on Plymouth Avenue, the main thoroughfare through that community, we have endured barricades, all for the sake of objectives that have already been met. And so we're asking, take yes for an answer. Please go. And we're not saying end the protests. We will be with you continuing to draw attention to police misconduct, continuing to draw attention to racial inequities, continuing to make our voices heard and our points made. We're just not going to hold the community hostage any longer. And we're asking that you respect the community and the people that you have said you are here to serve. Take yes for an answer, please.
I'm Alfred Babington Johnson, a homeowner in North Minneapolis since 1984 and a child of the civil rights movement. I spent time in Keysville, Georgia in the late 1960s being trained by Medgar Evers and Ruby Hurley, marched, went to jail, and sang freedom songs in Knoxville, Tennessee, and tried with others to quell the riots in Washington, D.C. after the assassination of Martin Luther King, Jr. I have no greater hero in the movement than former Congressman Parren Mitchell. His motto was, "Aluta continua." Translation, the struggle continues. This is a truth for African American people. The quest for true freedom and equitable access to resources didn't begin yesterday and is not to be concluded today. The struggle and our commitment to that struggle continues. The struggle has a purpose, and every protest must have a point. And each protest must be a part of a greater plan if we're ever to accomplish the victory that my people and our society need. The untimely death of Jamar Clark at the hands of Minneapolis police officers is an event that has focused our efforts and helped to sharpen our ideas and has produced protests of various kinds that have concluded many facets of our community, young and mature, male and female, black, native, and white. Black Lives Matter, the clergy, our legacy organizations like the Urban League, and many citizens of our community without specific affiliations, but with intense concern and commitment to the struggle for our people. Folks who want an end to the outrageous string of deaths at the hands of public officials and an end to far too many deaths occurring in violence within our neighborhoods. We stand today with a renewed dedication to the struggle, and we stand here today also with the responsibility to embrace the energy and courage of all who want to advance the effort, and with the responsibility to offer wisdom to all who are open to receive wisdom. I experienced a time in the 60s and 70s when frustration over injustice became riots and destruction. The carnage focused attention, but what we realized was that the destruction was of our own communities. Our grocery stores and small businesses were burned. Our local residents were deprived of services, and the devastation lingered for decades as we watched progress in communities surrounding our people, while our folk languished and endured lengthier rides on fewer buses to get to needed services. The struggle has purpose, and the protests must have a point. The demands we made in unity after the death of Jamar Clark have been responded to with a federal investigation, release of the name of the officers involved, grief counseling for the family. The mayor and the governor have joined our voices in seeking the release of the videos at the earliest point that would not damage the investigation. Our specific protest has borne good fruit, but the struggle continues. The protest has a point, and the struggle has to have good plans to effect success. We need to embrace the victory our current protest has achieved, recognize the danger and discomfort we've inflicted on our own neighborhood and the services to our people that have been choked off, and we need to move forward with new goals and new tactics. We suggest that our attention must shift from the 4th Precinct to City Hall and the state capitol. We ask the mayor to accelerate the plans for dash cameras and body cameras for police. We ask the mayor and the city council create incentives to residency in the city of Minneapolis for new hires to the force. And we ask that the communities be provided with a voice in respect to the officers that are sent into our neighborhoods. That's right. We ask the governor and the state legislature to enact legislation empowering cities to implement residency requirements for police. And we ask that the special session being considered embrace a consideration of economic justice for the African American community. We also ask that those well-intentioned and committed servants, white and black, young and mature, male and female, that are now occupying the 4th Precinct, join our laser-focused turn to the seats of power and to move for change. Some good souls are so wedded to the geography of the precinct. If you're such souls, we ask that you no longer impede the services of our neighborhood, but accept the offers to move to the open spaces across the corner, across the street from the precinct, or the open space on Penn and Plymouth, and conduct peaceful protests there. To those who've attached themselves to the protests that are flying the flags of anarchy, we ask that they pursue their own agenda without corrupting the legitimate pursuit of our people for justice and access. The struggle continues, and we must continue the struggle.
My name is Cora Mccorvey. I'm the Executive Director of the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority. First, I want to express my deepest and profound sympathy to the family of Jamar Clark for their loss. You see, I am a parent of a black young man. I am a grandmother to 6 grandsons, and I'm very aware of the concerns of the Clark family and for those folks that are protesting and calling for action in North Minneapolis. That is why I'm here. I'm here to ask for help. Just down the street from the 4th Precinct is an 84-unit public housing senior facility where some very vulnerable and very low-income residents live and call home. Many of these residents suffer from a wide array of health ailments, including respiratory disorders, other serious ailments, and the campfires have exacerbated the health, I believe, of our residents. Our residents often need the services of 9/11, and the blockage of the streets can delay the help that these residents so desperately need. All the residents, as I said, are frail and they're elderly. The atmosphere surrounding our building and these protests are bringing an uneasiness, a tense, a stress, whether it's perceived or real, to these elders that are just trying to live their lives and be peaceful. The Public Housing Authority had to increase its security expenses for that building for obvious reasons. I agree that Black Lives Matter, and as most of our residents are people of color and black, I am asking that you take into consideration the lives of those most vulnerable residents that live at the high-rise building, the seniors, and move your encampment immediately. Thank you.
How's everybody doing today? My name is Tran Pollard, and I came aboard with this. I have a nonprofit called We Push for Peace, and for some odd reason, it's this myth in the community that it's a bridge between our elders and our officials versus the youth. I speak to the youth on a daily basis, and we have a lot of community activities where we engage our youth. So when this happened to Jamar, we sat down with the family, and one of the first things the family stated to us was that they didn't want his death to be in vain. They wanted his death to mean something. So I'm going to speak directly to the youth. In regards to this protest, you can't tell me that it's justice for Jamal by spray painting on a police station. You can't tell me that barricading Plymouth Avenue and denying access for our elders to get on the bus to go do their little grocery shopping or to get out and have a little fresh air is justice for Jamal. You can't tell me that by cutting off Plymouth Avenue and not having access to Turning Point, which is one of the most successful treatment facilities in the state of Minnesota, is justice for Jamal. I speak to my youth, and I'm going to say this. These are our elected officials. This is who we hold accountable for some of the things that are unjustly done in our community. So this is how we repay him. We repay him by making sure that we are registered voters. All right. We repay him by making sure we're not walking down the street with our pants hanging to our ankles. We repay him by not looking at each other like a disease and actually speaking to each other when we see each other. We repay him by going to school, respecting our teachers, getting the education that's so providedly for us. That's how we repay him. I was out there last night and a truck pulled up and put a damn basketball court in the street. A basketball court, and said this was on our list. What list? That's not justice for Jamal, period. That barricade needs to move. And I hope you hear what we're saying to you guys. If we want justice for him, let's do it exactly the way I said. Let's pull our pants up. Let's get our education. Let's talk to each other. Let's speak to each other. I have nothing against Black Lives Matter. But when we make a statement like that out of our mouth, we got to be cautious in what we're saying when we say Black Lives Matter. Do we want our lives to matter more to somebody else? Because what we display amongst each other, it don't matter to us. It's got to matter to us first in order for it to matter to anybody else. It's time for us to stand up and be accountable for the bad choices and decisions that we chose to make in our life. We can't blame nobody else. Everybody in here has played a part of some kind of basketball team, soccer, I don't care what it is. And one of the things you've always heard was, once that team was assembled, they wanted to weed out the bad seeds. That's what they wanted to do. Because one bad seed can spoil it for the whole bunch. My message today is simple. What happened to Jamal is unjust, and we should protest when something is unjustly done to us as a community. But when do we start protesting each other? Because we are unjustly treating each other more than anybody else.
Good morning. My name is Blondell Yang. I represent the 5th Ward, which is the area surrounding the 4th Precinct. And I guess I'm also a resident of the 4th Precinct. The 4th Precinct includes the parts of the 7th Ward, all of the 5th Ward, and all of the 4th Ward. And, you know, I think from my end, we just see the sorts of inconveniences that are tough for a lot of residents who live around the area. You know, not having access to Plymouth Avenue, not being able to go all the way through. I mean, just, you know, within the last couple of weeks, I mean, a lot of helicopter noise from, you know, I mean, the press, from everybody else as well. And it just has been tough for people to, you know, go to work, do the daily things that they do, and it's been difficult for folks. And so, you know, for myself, just getting these phone calls just makes me wonder, you know, when is this going to end? And, you know, I think for myself, you know, at some point, I mean, the demands, many of them have been met. Some of them just can't be met. And for the most part, it's just time for folks to go home. And so I just, you know, would encourage folks to go home to your families. It's getting cold. You know, this struggle is real, and this struggle will continue, but we're going to make some progress on these struggles. So thank you.
My name is Barbara Johnson, Minneapolis City Council President, and I represent part of North Minneapolis. I just really want to speak about the facilities that are on Plymouth Avenue and what an important arterial it is in our community. First of all, our senior citizen high-rise, Rainbow Terrace. As Ms. McCorvey said, the people that live there are frail, vulnerable. Many, many people have pulmonary issues. We have the highest asthma rates in North Minneapolis of any zip code in the state of Minnesota. Those fires are exacerbating children's challenges that they experience in the townhomes that line Plymouth Avenue to the west of, to the east of the precinct. North Point, our only health center, is on Plymouth Avenue. Thousands of people come to North Point for medical care. UROC, the University of Minnesota Research Center, Research and Outreach Center, beautiful facility in our community on Plymouth Avenue, next door to the precinct. People are lacking access to these great facilities that exist in our community, and we need to end that. We, as city officials, have been responsive to, and I appreciate the mayor's work on responding quickly to the demands of people to investigate this away from our police department. That has been our responsibility, and we have done that. But we also have a responsibility as a city to maintain order in our city, and having an arterial street in the middle of a challenged community closed down does not improve public safety, does not improve the lives of our residents that live adjacent. And it is an inconvenience that would not happen in any other part of the city. It would not be tolerated anywhere else. And so it can't be tolerated here. Thank you.